Welcome to the Ship It podcast. I'm Brandon, and today I've got Brian and John with me, so I'll have them introduce themselves. Brian?
How's it going? I'm Brian Manning. I'm an Android developer at Rocket. I've been at Rocket for a little over 2 years now.
Yeah, and I'm John Princeby. I am the lead for the Rails practice here at Rocket, and I've been here almost at 2 years.
All right, so today we're going to talk about phone screens and homework, because it's something that we do a lot here now, especially since any company that's trying to grow has to do the interview process, which is like you look at resumes, then you filter that down, and then you do phone screens and you filter that down, and then you do interviews and you filter that down. The interesting thing, as I've been doing more of this, I'm trying to get better at phone screens, because you don't want to tie up everyone's time in interviews. If it's it's a waste of the candidate's time, and it's a waste of everyone's time that's doing the interviews, and I feel bad when it doesn't go well. I feel just bad across the board. So I'm trying to figure out the right way to do phone screens, and I feel like sometimes I get duped. It's probably the best way to put it, and I'm trying to learn the best way around that. So I guess the first thing right off the bat that I would ask is I should say a phone screen for us. Typically, I should kind of walk through what my phone screen looks like. So it's typically 30 minutes if we don't run over. And it starts with me basically explaining what Rocket is and how Rocket came to be, kind of like a soft pitch for 5 to 10 minutes. And then I start asking questions about what they do, what they are working on right now, why they don't like it, why they left, and then I start to kind of dig in a little bit about technical stuff. It's kind of hard to suss out really deep tech questions, I think, on phone screens. And I think that's where I'm struggling. So then I get to the end of it, and I'm like, all right, let's get into it. And then, even when I don't like them, I always go through this process all right, well, we'll go through next steps, and I'll talk to so-and-so, and we'll get my people talk to your people, and talk to you later. And then I hang up the phone, and I'm like, I'm not going to talk to you later.
Yeah, I find it can be a challenge to really weed out people on a phone screen, because there are people that are really strong who just don't do well on the phone, and there are people that are really weak who can somehow sell themselves. So it's tough. The way I usually approach it is I start the meeting by letting them give me their background and how they've gotten to where they are now. Tell me about a project that you're working on that you're really proud of. Sort of give a high-level overview, and then dig in from there. Get a detail of, okay, you worked on this big project. What was your focus? And let them explain it. And if they have a real hard time explaining the different moving parts, then likely they weren't super involved. And being at Rocket, we're looking for more senior people. You need somebody who's going to have that vision, that has seen not just their one piece, but a lot of the moving parts.
That's true. We do have a lot of jacks of all trades here, which is really helpful, because in an agency world, we just have to do a lot of different things. Brian, what kind of tech questions would you talk about?
So I sort of do something in the middle. What I try to do is sort of talk a little bit about architecture, and in Android there's there are a few different ways you can do things architecture wise, and there's sort of the one that Google's pushing now, and to see if they're sort of up to date on the latest things. That doesn't always mean that they're a strong or weak candidate. They might have heard about it or tried something and done a really simple tutorial, or they might be, have been part of a team that already had an existing architecture, so they might have not necessarily tried that new one. But at least give somebody an idea to, a chance to talk about pros and cons and how they view it, and if they have at least some opinions, then that they have more than just a passing knowledge generally of it. And then that usually transitions into, okay, in the projects you worked on in the past, you can sort of drill into that based on what the architecture they've worked with, and sort of get an idea, because as John said, someone being able to talk about a problem they've worked on and being able to articulate it well, both speaks to their communication, which is a big part of working at an agency, and speaks to their ability to actually understand the problems they were working on.
That's true. I love it when someone can explain something to me that I don't know, and they can explain it to me I feel like I could turn around and sell that. That's they would explain it to me so well that I want to use it. I want to I feel like I want to get my hands on it. It's tough to figure those things out on the call. I'm wondering also if I wrote it up on the board here, so that's why I'm thinking about it. But culture fit, it's funny. It's one of these things that people talk about all the time around interviews, but I wonder if it's something that I should even be concentrating on during a phone screen, because it's like there's no body language. I don't even know what this person's like, and I'm trying to figure out. Like sometimes, well, yeah, to your point, sometimes people sell themselves really well, and it's not always just because they're good. Sometimes they're just like the schmoozy types, which is it's hard to see through that for me anyway. So I wonder if I'm just like maybe thinking like, oh, this person's such a good culture fit, and then I'm like, but did I ask them tech questions? Like, I maybe I shouldn't even be trying.
Yeah, I have less of like a checklist on a phone screen, and it's almost more of a gut feel. Like, is this person? Do I want to learn more from them? And if I do, and I think that other people could learn, then it's probably worth bringing them in. There are some people that are clear no's, some people that are clear yeses. It's that middle of the road that's the hardest to figure out. Excuse me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Your point about like old tech stacks. It's like it's. I try not to judge people based on the fact that they're using old tech and like, oh, well, I haven't had a chance to sink my teeth into React because we've been on Angular for forever. And but it's more about having them explain the thing that they know, because that's all that matters. And we've talked to some people on the phone who are like actually technically very strong, and it's like the resume is strong and their skills are strong, but when they go to articulate it, it's just they stumble so hard. I'm like, this is tough because everything on paper looks good, but then it's hard to be in an agency and not be able to talk about it.
Yeah, that is, in many technical roles that might not necessarily apply, but in ours it does. And I think that in the phone screen, it's really hard to, those middle grounds people are really hard to suss out. But I think that the red flags are more what you're looking for in a phone screen of this is a clear no. And then the middle ground is always going to be there to some extent.
Yeah, I like to ask the question, what are you interested in learning? Like what's your focus on? Because that sort of gives you an idea of, yeah, I'm working on an old tech stack, but I'm really interested in what some of the new stuff is, or I'm interested in this new library that I haven't had a chance to work on, but it shows that there's some interest in furthering their expertise.
Yeah, I often ask about like side projects and stuff that people work on. Not everyone always gets a chance to, but usually people are expressed then like, oh, I really wanted to sink my teeth into some new thing. Like, oh, React hooks just came out and I want to try that, or whatever. That's a very front-endy thing. But yeah, so, I'm trying to figure out like how deep do we go with those technical questions on a call? Or is it more just sort of like let them talk and then you suss out what their answers are and just kind of let them ramble? Instead of me like pinging specific questions, being like, explain to me what this exact thing is, like let them just ramble, like let them talk. Is that probably a better approach, you think?
Yeah, I think generally it's if you can have the conversation, it's better, it's best. Sometimes some people aren't as easy to, don't talk so well. And so then you have to sort of dive in. And we do have a few sort of more specific questions to then try to edge the conversation along. But if ideally they can, get it all out themselves and just sort of ramble, and it can become a back and forth versus a interrogation. Yeah. But sometimes you want to have some prepared questions just in case it doesn't flow so well.
I'm glad you said that. I've had the times where it feels like an interrogation a little bit. Like doesn't feel conversation. I'm like, all right, next question. Like, where were you on the night of this? Like, yeah, it's awkward. So, the second part of this, or I guess it's not the second part of this. This whole podcast is two things: phone screens and homework. So this is the other thing about like bridging this gap between I've talked to you on the phone, and now I like want to maybe bring you in, or okay. Well, we've talked about this. Do we give homework to everybody, or do we only give homework to the people where we're like kind of on the fence about it? So that's the other thing that's hard on a phone screen. You only get 30 minutes, so sometimes I'm on the fence and I don't really know which way I'm leaning. Like in an interview scenario, what we usually say is like, if we're all on the fence about this candidate we just interviewed, then we're like off the fence. There's no point in all of us being like kind of wishy-washy about it. But on a phone screen, it's very common, like you were saying, not everyone speaks well. It's a thing. Sometimes people have a hard time articulating things on the phone. So I'm trying to figure out if we should have homework at all, like if we should give it out and how big should it be. I really want to avoid the whole like build me a small website, like, or build me an Amazon.com clone kind of thing. Have you given out homework before? Here's a better question. Have you gotten homework from past interview experiences? Have you ever had to like do a homework experience?
I have a few times, and usually it's something pretty small, and so then I actually would take the opportunity to sort of like do some nice little flourishes and things to, show off.
Flair.
Because most of the time it's not that big of a thing, at least in my experience. I'm sort of mixed personally about homework because you do have the chance to, sort of weed out people who it's a developer's market right now. And it's like, oh, they're going to ask me to do homework. I don't want to spend the night doing it. Like, I'm only kind of interested.
Yeah.
Which is like a good and bad thing because maybe it's good that you lost somebody who's only kind of interested, but maybe they could have been a great candidate. So I'm personally mixed about it.
Yeah. I've never received a homework assignment, but I've given out a number of homework assignments, and I've gotten mixed feedback. Some people, I think one of the problems with the homework assignment is in an interview process, I think people assume that asking questions is a bad thing. And one of the homework assignments I've given, I intentionally put in vague descriptions in hopes that they would come back and ask for detail, because that's the typical interaction with a client. They don't give you a fully fleshed out spec. So yeah, I want them to come back and ask detail. I've gotten some really good assignments. Somebody knocked out something in a couple hours and handed it in. And then I've had some senior people who were completely turned off by the fact that I asked them to do homework and are like, fuck this, I'm not interested in the job.
Yeah.
So it can work both ways. And in that scenario, that's probably somebody that I was excited about, but I was in the mode of giving everybody homework. And it wasn't really necessary in that situation.
So Jesse had batted around the idea of like paying people for their time, compensating them with like a, hey, and this comes down to how big the homework is too, but like, let's say it's like a, I don't know, $200 gift card, like Visa gift card or something like that. Like it's not crazy, but it's like enough to be like, hey, we know this sucks, but it's part of it.
Yeah.
It's sort of, it's kind of admitting like, we get it. We would not want to do this either because it's like not a great way to spend your time. But I wonder if would you do that? Would you be more inclined to like, they get it. That's kind of like, maybe I'll try this because at least they're open to the idea that like, they're not just chewing up my time.
I think it's a good way to let them know that we value their time.
Yeah.
And we're not just, throwing this out to everybody and just see what you come up with. So I think it's some good incentive. If somebody's truly interested, I don't think $200 is going to make it and break it for the guy who decided, he's appalled by the fact that we asked him to do homework, but that's fine. It's those middle tier people that they're probably on a job hunt talking with other people. We're asking them to invest a little bit of time into showing us what they can do for Rocket. So I think it's a nice gesture, and we'll hopefully get somebody more interested in actually putting some effort into it.
Yeah, that's true.
And I do think that it probably could be a differentiating factor if somebody's interviewing around and they've done a few homework assignments. If you get paid for this one, it's like a pretty, maybe it's not an impactful amount of money, but it's a nice little bonus.
It's true. I remember like internships in college and stuff, and you're like, wow, you got paid for yours? That's awesome. How do I get in there? It's sort of different. Yeah, it's like, oh, they value my time here. That's cool. I like that. That's true. It makes a big difference.
And I know that looking at the sentiment on Hacker News and things, it seems like a lot of companies are going that way of having, if you're doing homework, having it be paid, and that I think you are starting to see it become more normal than just a sort of outlier.
What are some of the other? I didn't know that other people were doing this. That's cool.
It was more of you'll see discussions about interviewing and the process, and there'll be heavily upvoted comments that are saying you should pay if you're doing if they're doing homework and that kind of thing, which I've never been a part of on either end, but it's interesting that there's the sentiment out there seems to be pretty strong, just in the internet.
Yeah, I think to your point, like it is a developer's market.
Yeah.
So if you want them to go that extra mile, giving them a little incentive, I think you'll have much more success with it.
Especially when we're trying to hire senior people that are like, I can go anywhere. It's like, exactly. Why would I spend my time doing this stupid exercise?
Yeah, a lot of people, and this is good and bad. Like if I'm going in someplace to interview, I'm looking for them to sell me on the company. Yeah. I'm not trying to sell myself, because anybody who's really good and is senior and has been doing it for a long time, they know they're good, right? So I think the interview works both ways too.
Oh, definitely. I like it when people ask me questions and I get to like the last tier of the interview and I'm like, I am now selling you. I don't know if it's clear, but that's Yeah.
And if you give a homework assignment that is a waste of their time, then I'll go somewhere else. I don't need to be there.
Yeah. So can't be too long, right? Like, what are you thinking? Like a couple hours, maybe?
Yeah, a couple hours. Like in the past, I've done like a full project, and you and I had talked about this before, where I almost feel like it's too much. I'm leaning towards going and having an existing project where we ask them to implement a feature. Shouldn't take a huge amount of time. Get a Git repo up and just say the submission is you submit a pull request. And that way we can look at the code, we can see what you did, we can see that you followed existing standards, because it's much more rare to be able to go in somewhere and start from scratch. You're typically joining an existing team. So being able to work within that project and not try to force your coding style down, and just following what exists, I think is a valuable metric to collect from them.
And I like that from the Android perspective, because with a lot of our coding, pairing that we do in our interview process now, the first, half hour to an hour is somebody just setting up retrofit and HTTP and sort of these standard libraries that everybody uses, but you only do it once at the beginning of a project.
Yeah.
And it's always a stumbling block because you don't do it that often, and it's not necessarily indicative of how productive someone really would be.
Right.
Sure. Yeah,
typically, you're just following a Google tutorial to get it up and running. So
I was gonna say, because if someone was like, "Hey, can you configure this Webpack thing for me?" I'd be like, "I haven't done that since Webpack 1 or 2. What version are we on now? Oh, I got to learn this thing." Yeah. Actually, there's when I did one of these homework exercises for Facebook, I was just doing this like interview everywhere for a while when I lived in LA, because this is fun and I like homework and this is a good exercise, and it's like I wasn't planning on going anywhere. I just enjoyed it. I certainly didn't want to work at Facebook. But their homework was build like a very basic calendar kind of thing in React, and I hadn't used React. I'm like, oh, this would be a good excuse to use React and crack into this. But one of the things they had was it has to just be like open an HTML file and run, right? I don't want to run a local server or anything like that. So, me like got into this and I was having fun. I'm like, all right, like npm start, write a README doc and like send it off, and like, boom, you failed the idiot test. Like, I can't open this thing in an HTML file. I'm like, that's fair. I'm like, yeah, I did not do that. I was like trying to be all shiny and like be like, look how much I did. And I gave you docs and I got these helpful comments, and they're like, but you failed the one thing I asked. I'm like, yeah, okay, I did.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would be that harsh though. If someone did that, I'd be like, yeah, but you kind of did a lot, I don't think I would care that much about that kind of thing, but yeah. I also want to plant little things like that.
In an agency, you delivering something fantastic is great, but if it's not what the customer wants, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So,
and on time. That's key. Yeah, we've seen a lot of that where we try to shoot for the moon, and it's like, well, it's 3 weeks late and it's still not done, but it's so cool. Yeah, yeah, that's not great. Let's see, what are we at here? Oh, we're doing good on time. Are there other notes you guys wanted to cover before we move on into picks or anything like that? There's a lot of things that we could talk about here. It's kind of a vague subject. All right, so we're going to go around. We'll do our picks. I'll go first because I'm already talking. So my pick this week is going to be, or this episode is going to be the Black Mirror episode called Bandersnatch, which is a choose-your-own-adventure thing. It takes place with like you're a computer programmer in the mid-'80s and you're working for this video game company, and it's really cool. I'm not going to be like, oh, it's so trippy and makes you think about reality in a weird way, man. It's just a cool choose-your-own-adventure story. And the way that they like rewind from when you made a wrong choice, let's say, or like the thing ends too fast, the way they bring you back up to speed and kind of recap everything is new and different each time you watch it. And so it says it's an hour and a half, but it's really closer to about 2 hours. But I definitely recommend it. But yeah, clear your schedule a little bit for that one. That's good stuff.
Great. Mine's a book. It's Weapons of Math Destruction: How Big Data Increases Inequality and Threatens Democracy by Kathy O'Neill. She's someone who worked as a quant on Wall Street, I believe, and then moved into startups, building big algorithms. And I read the book a few months ago, so it's not entirely clear to me, but my recollection is that each chapter is sort of devoted to a aspect of sort of life, whether it's education or crime, healthcare, and how what ends up happening is people build algorithms that end up being self-reinforcing or end up causing more harm than good in terms of whether or not it's existing biases in the developers or unforeseen circumstances, and that if we're not careful, it's pretty easy to have these black box algorithms that tell cops where to go in certain neighborhoods that might not be the most effective use of their time or the resources. And I found it very enlightening and somewhat depressing.
A little terrifying.
But it was a very interesting.
I never thought about that.
read.
Like the idea that you could have this downward spiral of like a self-reinforcing algorithm that, and if you're not paying really close attention, it could just end up being like that racist Microsoft Twitter robot, and you're like, what did we do?
Exactly. Yeah, that's the tweets or whatever it was is a great example.
Yeah.
Cool. So my pick is Elixir Phoenix Live Views. If you're not familiar, Elixir Phoenix, Elixir is the language, Phoenix is the framework, is a similar framework to Ruby on Rails, where it's very opinionated. It's built, Elixir and Phoenix are both built by Rails core developers. It's my favorite language by far right now, and Live Views is a new feature that Chris McCord, who is the creator of Phoenix, is building to utilize the Elixir's concurrency model, where they have socket channels built into the framework, and Live Views are a way that you can tag HTML to do JavaScripty validation type framework. So you don't need it if you want to just have client-side validation of field inputs on a form, for instance. You don't need to put in an entire React infrastructure onto the UI. You just tag it, and it actually will make calls back through the socket, validate with the actual models defined for the database, and return true or false. And it is incredibly fast and incredibly scalable. It still has not been fully released. I've been playing around with some of the beta stuff, and it's incredible. It's game changing for me because I love the client server, actual server side rendered HTML, and the fact that I don't need to go and put in a full JavaScript framework into the front end for simple tasks like this is a game changer. Yeah,
makes a ton of sense. I don't know why. When you explained that, I was like, I don't know why it took this long to get there.
Yeah,
but that's incredible.
So interesting how it came to be. Was he was trying to build this on Rails.
Okay.
And Ruby, their concurrency is it's a major problem in Ruby. Because he was trying to build this in Ruby, he decided he was going to look for another language that it might work better in, and then port that to Ruby. He found Elixir, which was created by Jose Valim, and found that he loved this language. So he, for 2-3 years, built Phoenix rather than focus on his live channel communication, built Phoenix so that he could then implement that feature that he was trying to do a couple years ago in Rails. So it's very cool. I encourage everybody that's interested in that stuff.
That's my understanding of Elixir's thing was basically a lot of real timeness was built into Elixir. That's the worst elevator pitch ever. I understand, but
Elixir's built on Erlang. Erlang is a language created in the 70s by Ericsson. So they built software
like Sony Ericsson,
Ericsson, the phone communication company in Europe, and so they built a system that was extremely fault tolerant because one phone call having an error can't bring down the system, and just huge concurrency. It needs to be able to scale well. So Jose found this language and decided, it's written like a 70s language. It's not super easy to get into. He decided to write a language that would compile to Beam, which is the Erlang virtual machine. And you get all of that stuff built in. It's just incredible what you can do with the language.
Pretty crafty. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh.
That is cool. Yeah, that's like maybe that's like gonna be a return. I always thought for a while like back end dev is gonna be like what do you call, like back end as a service, these headless CMS kind of things, and we're gonna move away from that. But this is like maybe this will be like a nice return to the server side world, which I like it.
And it's not going to solve it's not going to solve all client side stuff, but a lot of that boilerplate stuff that everybody sort of wants, but you end up having, you don't want to do a bunch of jQuery, and you end up putting in these heavyweight frameworks that for something relatively simple.
And it usually boils down to form validation.
Yes,
At the end of the day.
it's always form validation.
Yeah.
And you don't want the validation to be duplicated on the client side and the server side, because you can't validate uniqueness on the client side.
Like Meteor, where it's like you can have isomorphic JavaScript, you can use the same on both, and it's like, yeah, but I had to create a whole framework.
Yeah.
This is nice work, and then it would be cool because at that point your JavaScript would be like, well, I just want to make things flashy and like animate. That would be. I like this. That's interesting stuff. That's a good pick. All right, well, that's it. I think. Thanks for coming by and doing this, and we'll do more soon. And I don't know when these are going to go out. We haven't built a website for it yet, so maybe we'll build it in Elixir. All right. All right. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.